Oshe Tangi Kompanyuto Sho. Okay. Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. Okay, great. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jen damje dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju tik dungal chichu tang tra wa ju tik dungal mepe dewa tampa tang minra wa ju tik nering chak tang ni tan tra we tang nom chempo lane pa ju che. So good evening to all of you. I'm pleased at least some of you could make it with all the load shedding, and it's good to see all of you. So tonight, I'm going to do the third and final part, and I've called it the causes and conditions we create for ourselves can lead to freedom or delusion, whichever you choose. And I want to start with a beautiful description from Nosho Kempo. He was a very, very great Dzogchen master, and he really understood. He was a down-to-earth person. So, I mean, he died quite a long time ago. So this was quite a long time ago, after he had come from Tibet to France for 5 or 6 years. And he writes down to his mother, his little mother in Tibet. He wants to tell her about all these experiences in France that he's seen, that she's never, ever been exposed to in any way. So he says, I wrote Mirror of Essential Points when I was in Dordogne, after being in France for 5 or 6 years, to tell my devoted mother what was happening to her little wandering child who had come to foreign lands where people fly in the sky in silver birds and travel under the earth. And this is a long time ago, so today it would be even more so. In silver birds, and travel under the earth and under the sea in powerful machines where there are so many different colors and experiences of all kinds, where there are all kinds of men and women of different colors, big and small, where some wear hundreds of clothes as adornments on their body and others have the scantiest of clothes, or walk nude at the seaside, while I wander myself around with nothing but old orange wraps and a straw hat to shield my bald, wrinkled head from the sun, where there are machines hundreds of trees high, buildings which reach down hundreds of meters below the earth, and people travel in fast trains, supersonic airplanes, in nuclear submarines, where scientists seem to have control even the sun over the sunrise and moonrise, and can play with the 5 elements, air, water, fire, wind, and ether or space, like gods, like magicians flying to the moon and heading even toward the sun, where there are people who are rich beyond belief and people who are poor beyond assistance, people who have so many different dreamlike experiences, the likes of which one has never heard of, dreamed of, nor would be likely to believe in Tibet. And you seem to be lost in the darkness of delusion, just like so many in Tibet and India, with or without material benefits, still thirsting for peace, contentment, and fulfillment, and lacking spiritual peace and realization. He says, now this is the important sentence, I have seen so many different kinds of displays, keep that word, displays, that one could never possibly describe them all. But if you see this clearly and have a good look at it, all those incredible, miraculous displays are just the dreamlike display of one's own mind. It's just a matter of one's perception. how one perceives and experiences things. Just as a glass of water might seem very different to a small fish who could live in it as a home than to us humans. No matter how amazing it is when one recognizes everything as the display or projection of one's own mind, when we see that all perceptions depend on one's own karma, then one is no longer amazed because one understands how things actually work and how they are. And then we can live harmoniously and appreciate everything just as it is. There are so many things to see, but what are they really? It's like a dream, a mirage, an illusion, a magician's hallucination. Some dreams last 100 years and then dissolve. Some last 1 minute or 1 hour and then dissolve. Others take concrete form and seem to last longer before dispersing. Everything is ultimately resolved in the absolute nature. Within such dreamlike phenomena, what is there, he says, to adopt or cling to? What is there to judge? What is there to reject or abandon? There is nothing to either pick up nor put down. When you awaken, when you recognize the dreamlike nature of appearances, then what is there to do? Just like a dream. So what? There's nothing more to do about it other than to know the dreamer, the knower. Who's dreaming anyway? And I think this is a very, very profound writing that he puts in his work, because I think that when we look at everything in our lives and we look at the causes and conditions and we look at our karma and we look at our lives and we look at everything, you know, we think to ourselves, this is for real. This is for real, but it isn't. One day when you're at the point, the gate of death, you're going to say everything was irrelevant except what you did for people, what you gave of your heart, your connection with people. All the other things are by the way. And I was saying to somebody today who said, I don't like my job and I don't really want to be in this job. And I said to him, what is there to like or dislike? Maybe it isn't the job you've dreamed of. Maybe it isn't everything you want to do. But every moment that you connect with a person in your job is worthwhile. That's all you take with you, nothing else. And it's so important that all of you actually understand that, because without understanding that, we can't really go further. And in this book that I'm going to teach you from tonight, called The Circle of the Sun, there's a quote, which is 2 quotes, in fact, that I want to give you from it, which are really important. It says, the teachings of Dzogchen are called cycle. Okay, mind cycle, space cycle, cycle of spiritual instructions. This implies, he says, a process is more circular than, instead of a beginning and an end. The departure point is the same as the destination. Very profound. We have to make the journey only to discover that we have always been at home. Now, this is what I'm spending all my time actually looking at inside myself, because I'm just seeing too many suffering people lately. Too many people who are absolutely suffering so badly, and so many things going wrong, and illness and everything. And I just think to myself, I've got to remember this thing, that we're making a circular action back to the beginning. The destination is right where we were. Why have we left that destination to go in a circle, to come back again to the exact same point, when we could have known that point right in the beginning? And the other quote is, he says, ordinary consciousness is dependent on the workings of the body. Because of ordinary consciousness, called SEM, your ordinary mind, we suffer varieties of afflictions, physical and mental. This is the activity aspect of consciousness, and its nature is ignorance, ignoring the truth. Ignoring the truth. Okay, I'm going to look at your message in a moment. Because ordinary consciousness is not aware of itself. Now I'm reading that sentence again. Because ordinary consciousness is not aware of itself. Therefore, it's susceptible to error and distortion. Can anybody tell me what it means to be aware of itself? I just want to see what Eugene was saying. He's saying with the power, and you just have to learn it for yourself. He says, Glinda, the good witch of the Wizard of Oz. You've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself. Absolutely, in the Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
What a sweet reminder of the power we all carry to accomplish great things. It's absolutely true. But you know, Eugene, not even really to accomplish great things, just to accomplish being a person who understands other people, who cares for other people, who cares what's happening to them. Just that is enough. I mean, I really, you know, what amazes me is in these terrible times, how people care for each other, how suddenly countries put aside their differences and people go and they help and they serve and they're there and they're crying and everything. And they've got nothing to do with it. It amazes me, but why? Why do things have to come to that? And how temporary is it? You know, I've read this little story before. It's a quick one, but I just want to read it again. A man dug a well by the side of the road. For a long time after this, weary travelers felt so grateful that they could recharge at the well. They called it the Wonderful Well, but one night, a man fell into it and drowned. So it became known as the Dreadful Well, and people started avoiding it. Later, it was discovered that the drowned man was a thief who was drunk and had left the road to avoid the police. It became widely known that the drunken thief had fallen into the justice dispensing well. Okay, so it changed depending on what was happening and depending on who was there and depending on what you needed. Now, you know, that little story tells you everything about the causes and conditions, because it just depends how you look at something. Like I was talking to the guy who gave me the cable, because I was telling him today, the one who came and put in a cable here. So I wanted to ask him, if the electricity goes off and there are 30 seconds between when the inverter kicks in and I get kicked off the Zoom, could the cable help? He said no, because the cable's still dependent if the electricity goes off. So then as I was talking to him, I was telling him what happens if the electricity goes off and the inverter doesn't come on, and then I'm kicked off and then I've got to reboot and come back on. And then suddenly, in the middle of talking to him, I went, so what? It's not the end of the world, you know, to go off and come back on. And as long as people know I'm coming back on, doesn't really matter. And look at the state other people are in. So what am I grumbling about? You just suddenly have another perception of everything that you're going through in your life. And next week, I've got to be away. I might come if I can, but Kathy's going to give you a beautiful talk next week on how when the chips are down, how you have to really resort to your Buddha nature. And then she's going to throw it out so everyone can tell their stories, including you, Mom. Okay. So the thing is that it's really important that we are doing practical things in this group. Okay. I will give you a lot of theoretical stuff of the Buddhism, but that's not the issue. If you don't get it and you don't speak to me and you don't tell me about you, then all my things are in vain. I want this stuff to be connected, and that is what I am doing this year. I am connecting with all these teachings. Otherwise, it's useless. So every time I find myself saying something critical or whatever the case is, I'm stopping immediately because I'm going, that's just your perception based on your karmic perception, based on causes and conditions that you put into action. So watch your step, my girl, I'm saying to myself. Don't be quick to judge. Stop and look at the other people and look at what they're all about and try to see if you can connect in that way. That's all that counts in the long run. So I'm just going to give you a quick 3-point summary of the Dalai Lama's teachings that I've been giving you over the last 2 weeks. And then I want to go on to this Traleg Kapchon's teaching, which is on the circle of the sun, which is really very, very interesting. And he talks about the causes and conditions. So I want to give you all of his stuff, particularly that you understand the alaya consciousness, that it is divided into the alaya jnana, that's the pure essence, and the alaya vijnana, that is where all your imprints and your karma and your misperceptions and everything are held. And this alaya vijnana is dependent on the whole ground of the ground of being. It's dependent on the essence. So when you understand that, tonight I want you to understand that you can go past the causes and conditions of your life. And that's what all my stories are about. Sorry, Lindiwe, that you missed all the story. Does anyone want to make any comment? Eugene, you look like you're fiery tonight. We're happy here, at least. Do anyone want to make a comment?
So you asked the question about the start and the beginning being the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think like a lot of life is, I don't know, about returning to that innocence that you once had, and that kind of awareness that you once had. Like, so you get so wrapped up in the karma and the cause and effect of this life and living out the karma and cause and effect of the previous life, that it's sometimes hard to just stop the momentum of it all, to just connect with the universal. It is there, but like you get it like in bits and pieces, like but it's just building that. But the thing is, it's building the capability, right? So it's not it's the process. It's like even the lamas are all working towards that. That's why they don't want to say that they're there yet, because they need to get there.
Are there lots of them, but they always say they need to get there because of the humility of their situation. Yeah, I agree. No, that's absolutely true. And that's what it's all about. And that's all we've got to do. That's what we came to do. So when you get sick again, the most important thing that you've got to teach them is how you go back to that essence, how you see that these are the causes and conditions that you've created that you now have to utilize. If you don't, they just come much worse on a person, as you having your second round of hard times, and it's really important. But you're not alone in that. I mean, I've got so many sick members of our Sangha in hospital and everything. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Yes, Mart.
You asked another question, Mel, and I think we got just distracted. It was something about awareness that knows itself.
Oh gosh, yeah, we have to come back. Awareness knows itself. What does it mean?
So yeah, well, I obviously have got no experience of that, but intellectually, is it true? Is it true that that is a state of number one, luminosity and knowing, and a state with no self? Would that be right?
A state with no what?
Self. No feeling of it.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about self. You're absolutely right. But you know what's so exciting here is that what is exciting here is that awareness knows itself. So that word, it knows. This is what I'm doing every day. I want to know. I don't want to perceive through my human mind. I want to know for sure what I'm dealing with, that it's dreamlike, it's illusionary, it's not going to last. Even if it lasts for the whole of this life, it's still temporary and transient. So when awareness knows itself, it means it is aware of everything that is happening. So when he writes, when Noshul Kempo writes of everything being dreamlike and everything being illusionary and everything, and he writes it so excitingly, it's not like he says, oh, all of this is just nonsense and I don't believe in it. He's so excited about seeing these silver birds flying in the sky and everything. But he knows it's a dream. He knows. It's that knowing. Whereas Sem does not know itself. That ordinary consciousness and ordinary awareness does not know about everything that is around them. And that's why Taisitu Rinpoche says, if you ask a scientist, do you know everything there is to know about an atom? So if the person is a really good scientist, they'll say, I know a lot about atoms. I've studied them and I'm working with atoms, but obviously I don't know everything there is to know about atoms. He says, so what I have for them is respect, but I have devotion for a Buddha, a walking Buddha, someone who knows, because that person, that being, knows everything about everything. Whereas the scientist only knows very well and very respectfully what he knows about whatever it is that he's studying, but he doesn't know everything about everything. So he said, I can have respect for him, devotion for the one that knows. So I think what you're saying is right. And I think that's what we're going to. We're going to get to the point where we know, what is this about in my life? What have I got to do? What have I got to say? What is it that I'm going through? When we know, then awareness has of itself. But just to give you the 3 points of what the Dalai Lama, what I was teaching you, okay, he said, the same causes and conditions that give rise to a situation, object, feeling also naturally disintegrate whatever has arisen. So if we leave them to liberate by their own selves, not repressing what's happening, not ignoring what's happening, not meddling in what's happening, just awareness. So the same causes and conditions that created that situation will be the same ones that disintegrate that situation. That's so important, because whatever created, look, even with illness, if you create the causes and conditions of illness, let's say either those causes and conditions disintegrate and you get better, or those causes and conditions disintegrate and the body the body goes and you die. I mean, simple. Everything has to disintegrate. That's the important thing. So whatever creates, disintegrates. That is one point. The second point is, it is our own feelings, thoughts, perceptions that determine happiness or suffering out of anything we go through. So the principal cause, whether we experience happiness or suffering, lies within, and not external. And that is our negative emotions and actions. They are the causes. So therefore, if we change how we feel and act, then things are totally different. Okay, so it's got to be an internal cause. Now, I've been dealing, I always have themes in my weeks. I don't know why, just works like that. But I've been dealing with people who are stressed. Okay, they absolutely and totally stressed. And so I asked myself, if your family is under the rubble of an earthquake and you are stressed, it seems quite a feasible thing. But if you are late for an appointment or haven't put your work together properly and you are stressed, it doesn't seem possible. Now, what I've worked out is that there are people who believe that their nature is stress. They believe I've got a stressful nature. So whatever they do, they're stressed about, okay? But that nature isn't the truth. That nature is just this human, temporary, absolute causes and conditions, karmic imprints that have come into play that make you believe you are a stressed person. But the minute you go back to the nature of who you really are and realize that your stress is caused out of your negative feelings, that's why you've got all this stressful situation. That's why you get caught on the highway. That's why you can't make the group. That's why you stress, because you've created the causes and conditions inside. So I try to say to people, take 2 minutes out. Whenever you feel stressed at whatever you're doing, take 2 minutes out and just breathe in fresh air and breathe out that same stressful nature, which is just an internal perception. There's no reality to it. You have to change that nature, that human nature. And so he said, all the causes of whether it's happiness or suffering. Now you can see this if you look at the earthquake, if you look at the war. Sometimes if you look at the Ukrainian war and soldiers are being interviewed, some say, you know what? We've got our land. We want to keep our land independent. We want it to be democratic. And so we're so happy to sacrifice our lives for that. And some people go, oh my God, this is the worst thing that I've ever experienced in my life, and it's too terrible. What I'm saying is it's understandable, but it's not the truth. And what the Dalai Lama was saying is that he has noticed that some people are 100% able to look at situations and not get deterred even by a negative feeling, but find something to reflect differently to the circumstances that are in front of them. And finally, the last point, and then you can say things, and then I'm going on to Trade Gabkon's teaching. He said, the Dalai Lama, we all have to see phenomena as empty of a self-existent. Now, he asks, does this mean that all these things in us are non-existent? No, but they only exist dependent on the causes and conditions which are changing all the time. Okay, they only exist dependent on the causes and conditions which are changing. They don't exist as a self-entity. They only exist because this happened, which created this, which created this, which created all the interdependent causes, and that's why they exist. But we make a mistake because in ignorance, we grasp at them as though solid and permanent, and we suffer terribly. So how things appear to us and how they really are is completely different. To realize this is to pierce through the deception and free the conditioned mind, free it. How do you free it? You look at, we're going to talk about it, but you look again, and you look again, and you look again, and you stand back, and you look at it differently. You do not allow yourself to look at through the perception of your human mind. So you wake up, you have awareness, and you let things self-liberate, which means liberate by themselves, disintegrate by themselves, because none of them are permanent. They all have emptiness, which means they are empty of a separate existence. They only come about because of all the causes and conditions. And that, in a nutshell, summarizes the Dalai Lama's teaching. So maybe if somebody wants to ask or comment, you're welcome. Then I'm going on to the other teaching. You're really welcome. It's just really important to see that his main things are that what gives rise to things also disintegrates them. That's the nature of the essence. Here is the essence. It gives rise to things. It's not a God, it's the essence that we all made of, gives rise to things, and those things then are temporary and they disintegrate back into the essence. So nature, it's the nature of how we all are. And then everything lies inside. We have to change the inside feelings and perceptions if we want the outside to change. And lastly, we have to see that all phenomena are empty of a self-existence. They're only there because of the causes and conditions. The minute some of the causes, like a rainbow, the minute the causes go, they will also go.
Hi, Mom. If no one else wants to say anything, you know I'm here.
Go
right.
on.
This is brilliant because, you know, Alan Wallace, his primary Lama is the Dalai Lama. So when I hear the Dalai Lama, I hear Alan Wallace.
Okay.
And it reminds me of how the Bodhisattvas are, you know, related to the peacock. Well, related, you know, the analogy of the peacock where they can eat the poison and then still thrive. So you could put a sattva in the presence of, let's say, one of these like Nazi oppressors, and it wouldn't harm them one bit. You would only increase the compassion in them because they would see, now look, the victimizer is always profoundly more deluded than the victim. I mean, imagine convincing yourself, justifying it to yourself that it's okay to hurt another person. So it can only increase the compassion in those beings. So like you say, one person will see it as, oh, I'm a victim. Another person, it'll increase their compassion.
But that's very important. But that doesn't mean that when they're getting tortured, that it's so easy to get the torture. Okay, because it's still painful when they're getting burning things on them and all the rest of it. But how they see it compared to us, never, never, never do they see it as something which is other than purifying their karma. That's why they can get through it. Now think of all the negative situations that you've got, how they clean out all the causes and conditions, the karma, the everything, so that you're free to actually enjoy everything that you need to enjoy. So when they're going through pain, it's the most amazing thing. There's a lovely little story that I've got here. It's very, very quick, which I'll give you, which is just on the subject. So it's very, very relevant. Here it is. Right. And it goes like this. An old Tibetan tale about a venerable Buddhist monk who mistakenly was accused of stealing and killing a cow, even though he was vegetarian. The monk was chained and put into a hole in the ground, yet he didn't say one word to defend himself. Although the cow was found a few days later, the man responsible for the monk's release got caught up in timely matters and forgot about the prisoner. The monk remained in this pit for months. At last, one of his disciples obtained an audience with the king and told him what happened. The king rushed to set the monk free and begged the old man's forgiveness, promising to punish those who were responsible for putting him innocently. The monk, however, implored the king to punish no one. It was my turn to clear my karmic imprints, to suffer, he admitted, explaining, now he knew this because of awareness, that in a past life, he knew he had stolen a baby cow, and while escaping from his pursuers, he'd abandoned it near a holy man meditating in the forest. And that man was blamed for the crime and chained in a hole for 6 days. I have been waiting lifetimes to expiate what I did, said the old man, and I'm grateful to your subjects for bringing me the opportunity to free this. Now, it's not always so easy, as you've seen with the causes and conditions. It's not you steal a cow, you get blamed for stealing a cow. It's not as simple as that. Karma, as I told you, Tasitu said, it's very complex. But when you are going through stress and snot and trauma and difficulties and no money and no this and sickness and all of these kind of things, you have to come back inside yourself and you have to look at that nature, that awareness that knows itself. And something inside you has to put your hands together and be grateful of this opportunity, open portal to unity with your true nature. Because if you hadn't put those causes and conditions into being, it would not be happening to you. Everything that is happening to you is because you created it somewhere. And although people feel it's not fair, I know it's so difficult when I look at Syria and I look at them having gone through a civil war and all those starving people and children, and now they've been annihilated by an earthquake. And I saw that disease could easily come in now after the earthquake. And I just put my hands over my eyes and I'm trying to look. I feel crying whenever I see anything on the TV, but I also feel like putting light there to say things like this can only happen because the causes and conditions have been set in motion, and there's no mistake. There's no mistake. And that still means we have to be compassionate and go out and help, but there's no mistake. So somewhere, just the moment that we go to that light knowing space inside us, we get a glimpse, even for a moment, even if we come back to the degradation straight after that, it's okay, because we say, I know. That's what the Dalai Lama is trying so hard to teach us, to not perceive through the human mind, to perceive through the awakened mind that knows. Can you all understand that? And let's hope that all those that can't be here tonight because of load shedding can get it. But let's do a very quick meditation and then let's go on to this beautiful teaching, because I want to mainly teach you some of the things he says about the alaya consciousness, alaya janana and alaya vijnana are very, very important. So I really want to get through that and then leave this whole subject matter, which is important, but I want you to understand. So let's just do a tiny meditation, just a few minutes. So breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in freshly, everybody, freshly. Be so grateful that you are where you are, that here you are. And because of the causes and conditions that you've set into motion, you are in the position where you are being offered on a platter how to go back to knowing. So breathe in and breathe out. And as you breathe out, let it all go out. And as you breathe in the freshness of that beautiful nature. When suffering arises, it is experienced like the meeting of an old friend in the middle of a marketplace. Whenever scurry of painful thoughts arise, in the very moment of their appearance, these thoughts are known as baseless and rootless, arising and vanishing automatically, no matter how great the pain. When it is experienced in the timeless moment of pure presence, it is known as happiness, or at least gratitude for having the chance to go back to who you are. Feel that in your hearts. You don't need to confirm this with anyone. Just experience it yourself, nothing more. As you sit there, you feel the total spaciousness of your beautiful mind. There is place for everything. So just breathe in, breathe out. Come to that timeless moment where it really doesn't matter whatever is happening and however you feel. It's just a reflection. When you see a reflection in the water, it's only a reflection. I said to a stressed young man this week, stop, stop. Take time to step back. breathe in, breathe out, and know that everything is just where it needs to be. And calmly, calm your step, calm your mind, calm your inside, calm your acceptance, and the stress will dissolve, just like clouds in the sky. As soon as you emphasize it, analyze it, pound it, work it out, and get the solution, you are right in the middle, as though it existed of its real self, and it is not true. So stand back, take a little time out, and allow it to just arise, dissolve, disintegrate back into the essence. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Trele Gamchakon. That's how you pronounce it. He lived from 1955 to 2012, just to give you a little bit of his background, because I'm going to use a lot of his things, because I think he's got a lot to say, so I'm going to use him over time. But he was recognized by His Holiness the Karmapa, the 16th, as the 9th Trele Toku, and enthroned at 2 years old as the abbot of Trangu Monastery. And then he went to Ramtek Monastery, where the 16th Karmapa was, at 4, where he was educated in Sikkim in exile by the Karmapa for 5 years. He had outstanding education for many years, settled in Melbourne in Australia. I was so surprised to know. And then established centers all over the world. And his writings are thought-provoking, challenging, profound, and highly relevant to today's world and its many challenges. So I've taken this section where he talks about the causes and conditions. So just to give you a little bit of what he's talking about. Again, he says the 3 aspects of our nature. You've got to know these, everybody. You've got to write them down. You've got to go back to them all the time. Okay? He says, when we examine, he calls it the ground of being. The ground of being. That's our essence of everything. You could call it the God force if you really like to call it that. You could call it the essence, the emptiness, the primordial purity. It's undescribable. Okay, it's undescribable, but it's our essence. Our essence has a nature, he says, totally indivisible from it. And it's called spontaneous presence. It means all the qualities of clarity, awareness, luminosity. That is the nature of the essence. You can call it primordial purity, the essence. You can call the nature spontaneous presence. It's the nature that allows things to be created. Okay, so the third aspect is called, he calls it unlimited responsiveness. Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche calls it unlimited capacity. Doesn't really matter, they mean exactly the same thing. It means the creative expression of the ground of being assumes various forms of expression in the world. Now, you know, when you know this, that there is this essence, it's in you, that's what you're made of. And the essence has got a nature, awareness, clarity, luminosity. And from the nature of the essence comes all these creative manifestations. You, the world, the trees, the life, the bowl, the whatever becomes from that essence. Okay. And then remember that, that from that, it goes back into the essence. It has to. It's like the ocean. When you watch the ocean, the waves come up, they come up to the tide, and then they return back into the ocean. They have to. Even if they're a tsunami, they have to come back in the ocean, because the ocean gave birth to them. They come back into the ocean. Now, this is so important when you are analyzing all of these things, everybody, because you've got to know that it actually comes back. From the point of view, from looking at the essence, from the essence, nothing could give rise to confusion. So come back, Mark, to that thing. Nothing could give rise to confusion in the essence, because it's the part that knows. It's the part that's got the nature. And so nothing, because it's unconditioned. That means it's not subject to causes and condition. It just always is. So you can't say that this essence, this creative force, this primordial purity came about because someone created it. No, it always was there. It always is there, and it always will be there. But the manifestations are temporary, and they will return back to the essence. But there's no confusion in the essence. I just want to give you a couple more sentences, then I'll open it up and you can ask me. Okay, because there are no causes and condition. So then he asks, so how did confusion arise? And how from confusion did we get to samsara, this illusory world? How did we get there? He says, the origin of samsara lies in the expression of the essence. So that expression could give rise to the possibility of confusion. Now, he gives a good example, and I'll open it up afterwards. If you take space, let's take space as an example. You can't touch it. You can't do anything with space. It just is. You can't banish it. You can't do anything. Space is space, wherever you are, even if you're in a tiny cupboard. He says, space is unconditioned, not subject to causes and condition. It's a state of total openness. Yet, clouds are formed in space because causes and conditions come together and the clouds form in the space. Do you all agree with me on that? So he says, the self-display of the mind is like the clouds of space and essence. So from the essence, we get pure and impure experiences of sentient beings. So when the mind becomes purified of defilements, then we get pure expression of the essence. Comments, questions, anything, okay? Because it's so important, this, to your whole life. Kath, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Mel, so I remember when I was watching these videos about what's been happening in the earthquake, there was a father that said he left Syria, he took his family out of war-torn Syria, took them to Turkey, and the whole family, he lost his whole family. I mean, and it's like, I think as humans, we think that somehow we can escape samsara, or we think that if we do something good, or, you know, we think that we can escape bad things happening. But it's like wishing for a sunny day or a beautiful weather every single day. It's impossible. The very nature of where we are is that you're gonna sometimes get bad weather, you know, bad things are gonna happen. And we think, you know, I mean, some things are
And
really...
are they bad? How do we know? There might be a little plant in the ground that desperately needs rain, And that's why the rain,
Yes.
we don't know, you know.
Yes.
We
Well,
don't
I
know
think
what's
we
bad and good. How
Yeah,
do
well,
we?
yes, we're here to clear karma. We actually, life is suffering. That's what the Buddha taught. He
Yeah,
said
but
the particular realm where we live.
As I told you, he did say,
Yeah.
life is suffering the way we live it.
Yes.
So if we want to change that and go to the cessation of suffering, then we've got to change the causes of the suffering, which are your negative emotions and your karma. You've got to change that. And you can only change that by having a pure mindset, by seeing whatever is in front of you is just the way it needs to be.
Yes.
It's so profound, this, even though it's basic Buddhist teaching, it's so profound because, you know, I've just awakened to the fact that I cause exactly my own suffering. I mean, I knew it long ago, kind of, but now I really can see it when it's in action. I can see when I'm talking to somebody and they're not getting it, and they're just going on and on and on. Now I can see, before I would argue and fight and, you know, and do all kinds of things. Now I can step back and say, I can see where you're coming from. And when you are willing to change, the whole world is going to change for you. It's so important. Jean-Francois, I know you asked me to repeat it. I saw your message there. But all I want to repeat for you is that if the essence is pure, the possibility of confusion and suffering arises due to ourselves, our attitude, our inner feelings, our karma. That's why it happens. So what we've got to do is we've got to change that inner feeling. So when I said to this young man, what are you so stressed about? I mean, why would you get so stressed about all the little things in life? It doesn't really matter whether they get done right, wrong, inside out, outside out. Why would you get so stressed? And then he says to me, because that's my nature, Melanie. I said, oh my God, how confused you are. I said, that's not your nature. That's your karmic momentum. That's the snowball coming down the street that's been going on and on and on until you've believed that you've got a stressful nature. There's no such a thing. There's a person who thinks he's got a stressful nature, but that's not the truth. Do you all understand? Yeah, Eric, go for it. I've been talking a lot today.
No, it's fine. Actually, I was agreeing with what you were saying. I was saying absolutely. The thought that was on my mind was in relation to what Kathy said, you know, where life is suffering. The Buddha said that. I believe that's the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. The second noble truth, what are the causes? And then the third, of course, the end of it, you know, and then the fourth, the path to the end of suffering. So the Buddha says there is suffering, but he's also saying there's a way to locate it and expunge it. So the best definition of Dharma.
Suffering how you see it, because you tell yourself it's suffering, but another person who can see it for what it is says, I'm so grateful this has happened to me because I'm being able to purify everything in my life.
Which takes me back to the previous thought we were saying, Yang Tang Rinpoche, 22 years in the Chinese concentration camp, and the man comes out just majestic, radiant. He's dazzling, you know, sublime, with authentic gratitude for his captors, not an iota of PTSD. Here we have a purse snatched and we're suffering for years and years. The earthquake, they were saying, the pieces that landed on the people, the imprints. But again, I'm going to go off on a tangent because in like modernity, we just want to blame externalities. Why
but,
are you
but then don't you know that story that I told about the Dalai Lama when the monk came to him and the monk said to him, he said, do you have any regrets? Who's also in being tortured by the Chinese and everything. Do you have any regrets? He said, only one, Your Holiness. He said,
I know that one. Yeah.
There was a time when I was being tortured, and for 1 minute, I lost my compassion for the torturer. And that was my only regret. I quickly had compassion because he could see that those people who were burning him and torturing him were going to have long suffering in their lives, really long suffering, because they're going to be in that demented state for maybe eons of time.
Oh, no, absolutely. And these beings, and you have to ask yourself, how is this possible? That someone can go into a concentration camp, be tortured, starved, have their family killed, their country taken over, and then they come out with nothing but gratitude, not a speck of PTSD in sight, nowhere, just superb mental health. They turned the whole thing into a retreat, right? We can't even turn a retreat into a retreat. And so how is this possible? And the answer is Dharma, you know.
But the difference between them and us is profound. Because what I've learned about the Tibetan masters and everything is they don't have the amount of negative emotions that we have. They didn't. Now they've come to the West, they're getting them quickly. But you know what? They don't have that. And also they're brought up. They walk around as little children saying Om Mani Padme Hum and reciting the Dharma and everything else. They in that dimension. But it is interesting because when they come to the West, a lot of them fall because of all the temptations that we have all the time. And, you know, they're the whole lot that have really let down their tulku incarnations and all of that kind of thing. But I have great compassion for them because I think it's so hard in the West. I think that if you grow up in a family where you are traditionally, you've got all of that. It's so wonderful because you really have that kind of attitude. Whereas our parents teach us, you've got a self. And you know, this master talks about the self and the ego, which is really very, very interesting because he says on the one page, there was so much that he says, maybe I shouldn't rush through it because it's really profound teaching. Maybe I should come back to it the week after. But he says here, when we become enlightened, the activities of the nature and the capacity continue. But while remaining in the samsaric condition, one experiences those differently. The ego's basis relates to the nature and capacity as ego is something one has created. And he says, we don't have to get rid of ego, just understand it for what it is. You know, sometimes a lot of these teachers say, get rid of your ego, get rid of your ego. He doesn't. He says, just understand it for what it is. It's relative and no real inherent existence. He says, memory and history and all of those things are what constitutes the ego. The individual is born in a place, he has a family, he has a school, he has a name, he has an occupation, etc. And in Buddhism, the ego is called an aggregate, you know, form, feelings, all the aggregates. He says this self and ego is based on many factors coming together relatively, but we can transform it. We don't need to annihilate it, but understand what it really is. That's all. So that we have to not fixate on the ego and self, just recognize it for what it is. And what is it? It's a series of causes and conditions that have come together in this lifetime. And we make the mistake of thinking, that's me. Who's me? When I was someone completely different in the previous life and someone absolutely different in the previous life. And I told you that Master Jet Li said when he was going to die in the tsunami in Thailand, he said at the moment that the wave came over him and he saw his daughter and her carer washed aside, and amazingly they all got saved. But he said, death is an equalizing thing. He said it equalizes all of us. When death is right there, we're all equal in the face of death. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You are not Martin and Fiona and Eric and Kathy and Pam. You're not those people. Goodbye. So when people hang on, like Mark, you're talking about going overseas and leaving behind all the things you know and going to another life and being there. But the point is, these are all temporary and transient. But there is something in Melanie that Melanie can use. That's what he's saying, that I can use my kind of personality, my kind of human nature. I can use it to serve. Do you all understand? But if I'm thinking I'm something great and I'm something amazing, then I'm going to die hanging on to Melanie and all her possessions and her children and her grandchildren and everybody else, which don't even belong to me. They've all got their own journey. They're just loaned to me for this little period of time. It's so important that you all understand that, Vian, you look like I've actually taken you and hit you over the head with a roller pin. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm enjoying it. Just enjoy listening to you.
Yeah.
I'm not.
It's amazing because I've got to, because he says, take that ego, take it and don't reinforce it as something tangible, because when you die, you have to leave all of that behind. And I've had these few deaths of people quite close to me lately, and with all of them, I've been saying to them, please just leave this life and your family and all the things you thought you were behind and move into your spaciousness, into your everything. Just move into it. Anyone want to say anything?
Yes. Mel, sorry for the darkness. It's load shedding. So I think I get the rising of form and aggregates and all that from the essence, and depending on, for lack of a better explanation, depending on how I perceive it, react to it, it either dissolves by itself or I create some, call it suffering or some karma, or right. What I'm not getting, and I'm also asking if it's important at all to know, is I think you mentioned something like initially. So if I go back to the essence, and we always say since beginningless time, but how did this? I would assume that there is a purity, and then there's the potential in the purity of the impurity. Is that right? But then, yes. But how does the separation actually then happen? I mean, what is it? Me before? Is there an?
It never happens. The separation never happens, because in the samsara is nirvana. In the nirvana is samsara, because it all comes out of the same essence. It's just way of perceiving it. I can't explain this to you enough, because
Sure.
when I do my practice, it's so interesting, because I like to look in the book of the 100 deities, and then I'm imagining what they are. So in the beginning of the practice, you're actually looking at your wisdoms, but at the same time that you're looking at your wisdoms, you are remembering the perversion of the wisdoms, which are the same thing. Okay, so in the one instance, what it says there, which is so interesting, is it says if you take the mirror-like wisdom, okay, so you're asking to see mirror-like wisdom. Everything's a reflection in my life, okay? It's all a reflection around me. And then you say, she's trying to come in, Marian, you're saying the reflection, the anger and hatred, all the those qualities, the aggression, the anger, and the hatred. If you're looking at that wisdom, mirror-like wisdom, the anger and the hatred are right there. And the mirror-like wisdom is the pure way of looking at it. And then the anger and hatred is the impure way of looking at it. But they're the same. And when you realize that, and I sit with it in my practice, when you realize that, it says there, the consciousness is transmuted, the aggregate is transmuted. So what is the consciousness? I was saying it to them yesterday. It's the 8 levels of your ordinary consciousness, 5 sense consciousnesses, 1 mind consciousness that says, this is how this is, that gives your opinion on it, good or bad. 1 pleasure consciousness, which then gives all your negative emotions. And then the alaya consciousness. In one instant, when I know that mirror-like wisdom, the anger and hatred is gone, the consciousness is gone. And I'm now in the wisdom consciousness. I'm in the true consciousness for that moment. I mean, it's incredible, everybody. It's incredible, because you realize as you go through all the wisdom that the negative part, the negative emotions are the same as the wisdom. You just can't see it. Can you understand what I'm saying, Mark? So they're the same.
Yeah.
Always are the same. They always were the same. It's just that when you look at the alaya, the ground of being, the essence, is pure. But because we see it as impure, we create the imprints in it, the karma and the negative emotions and all the imprints, and now it becomes a liar vijnana, a liar going away from the wisdom. Even if you can't understand what I'm saying, don't worry. Really don't worry. But according to Martin's question, it's so important. These things are so important. I can't rush through this. Like Jean-Francois asked me, he said to me, please, can you repeat all of that? You know what? What I really want to do, because I've got such beautiful stuff here, I want to do another session on this. Is that okay with everybody? Is everybody okay with that? Because I want to come back to this, because I feel I won't do it next week because I won't be here. Kathy's going to do it, but it'll fit very well. And then I'll come the next week and I'll do another one, because I don't want to rush through his teachings of the alaya consciousness and how it actually operates. Because I think to rush through it before 9 o'clock would be really, it's late and it's too much for all of you. I'd rather you just chat to me now and ask me for what you want to know. And Jean, please ask me. I just want to say one more thing. Confusion arises when one does not recognize the expression of the essence for what they are. When you don't recognize it, it's confusion. But it doesn't mean the confusion's the same as the enlightenment. It's just that you can't see it, but it was always there, inherent in the enlightenment. Fee, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you want to ask anything?
No, I do understand what you know, because it's that idea that everything is there's that almost like one taste type of thing. Everything is that one taste, and it's just our projections from karmic, stuff that's coming through that actually makes it into what it really is. It's that sort of projection that we have. That's how I understand it.
Brilliant. If you've understood that, that's really, really good. And Steve Britton, you might want to say something. Shivani, I haven't heard your voice. And Jean, if you want to ask anything, ask with pleasure. Please, this is the time to do it. I'm not going to rush through it because there's still a lot that he gives out, which is really worth it. And it's much better to just do each paragraph very slowly and then open it up, because otherwise I'm just whoopsing through stuff and there's too much here to actually give. Yes, Eric.
All right. For the question also from Martin there, because it's something I haven't really looked into, and I should be, of course, because it's very important. It's monumental, and you have mentioned it before, but the 12 links of dependent origination. Isn't that first link what Martin is also kind of asking about, where he says, where did we go wrong? How did we end up here? When did we forget who we were? How did we all of a sudden lose our purity, And isn't the first step ignorance, buying into appearance and saying, yes, oh, I'm over here and you're over there, and I'm really the separate sense of self. I mean, that separate sense of self, isn't that the primary delusion, the seed of it all? And it's that
primary delusion. But what I love about Trale Jamkon's, I don't know how you pronounce it, about his teaching is, he says, you can use the ego in this life. He doesn't obliterate it. You can use it to negotiate samsara, but as long as you know what it is. If I'm charming people and talking to them and teaching them and everything, I've got to know that that's a lovely side of my ego that I can have, or that's coming through me. But I've got to take it to a higher level and not be stuck on that principle of my ego. That's the point. And I've got to know that I only came together because of a whole lot of trials and tribulations and causes and conditions. And then I set other ones in motion. Very important. Mimi, you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I understand completely about the wisdoms and the poisons, but I just want you to embellish a bit about the consciousness. Then you say you can transform the consciousness. I know there are 8 consciousnesses, but I'm just not making that quite connection there.
Okay. I know you're not going to be here because you're going overseas, but you'll
Going
get
to do
the.
that.
But
Okay.
I want to discuss that consciousness because it's so important to understand, because if you look at each wisdom, so what we're doing when we get enlightened, everybody, is we're bringing the 5 wisdoms which we are compiled of. And in each of the wisdoms, as I've taught many times, and you can go back and get these recordings from Nadine, each wisdom is connected with a Buddha family. Is a Buddha family over there? No. A Buddha family is in there, not over there. We might put a symbol of it over there, but that's not it. It's in here. And each Buddha family is associated with one of the aggregates. If you look at the aggregates that the Buddha taught, form, your physical self, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness. Those are the 5 ones. So each of these wisdoms is associated with one of those aggregates. It purifies the aggregates. So that's why when you look at mirror-like wisdom, which is anger and hatred, the aggregate associated with that family is your consciousness. And so what you've got is a choice here. That's why Charlie Jabcon says, when from the essence comes impure, he says the essence never gets tainted, has no causes and condition. But when it expresses itself, it can either be, it gives the possibility of pure or impure. The expressions are really pure, but our seeing of them as impure, it gives that possibility. So when we get the wisdoms, it's so exciting. I'll give you another example if you want, like the wisdom of equality. That wisdom is when we know that everybody's got Buddha nature, even the ant. So when I've got an ant there, I wouldn't just casually flick that ant off and maybe harm it because it's got Buddha nature. So the wisdom of equality, of which the reverse, the negative one, is called pride. When you think yourself arrogant and proud, okay, the aggregate associated with it, Mimi, is feelings.
Okay.
So what happens is the feelings, so what happens is when you understand the wisdom of equality, that everybody's got Buddha nature, then what happens is your feelings get transmuted. So even if you had anger, hatred, pride, jealousy, whatever you had, it just transmutes straight away. The minute you're in the wisdoms, you're free, you're gone, you're in the pure expression of the essence. And you know what, everybody, those of you that find this a little difficult, it really doesn't matter. It's not important. I have done a lot of teaching on this, and it's all in my Monday morning groups. And you can go back and look at, you can get the recording of the 5 wisdoms and how all of this works. But I am very happy to teach this again and again and again and again. And if you don't get it, I'll simplify it. I'll push it down. You know, when I look at Tulku Urgent Rinpoche, he goes and he says, I want sentient beings to know about their Buddha nature, and then they won't suffer. So he tells it like this, like this, like this, like this. He gives it a million ways. By the time you finish listening to a talk of his, you've got it in one way or another. He gives it this example, that example, this example. And basically he says, what we're doing is we're starting to trust that real nature. We're starting to have trust in it because it's the part that knows. So it's the part that won't blunder all the time. No matter, just hang on, Eric, no matter what we're going through, it will never blunder because it is already in us and we're trying to go back to it. But to go back to it, it's like if you were walking on a street and there were a million pebbles and rocks and all kinds of things in the street. And you said, I can't get to the end of the street. And there's my destination I can't get. So you have to go and you have to take the rocks out of the way in order to walk to there. Now those rocks, those pebbles are all our obscurations, all our impurities that we've created, the causes and conditions over lifetimes. And so the practice is how we clean out the rocks and the obstacles so that we can get back to our original destination. Do you all understand that? Simply put, it really is important. So I will go back to these causes and conditions next time, and we can take them up. And I have some lovely stories and anecdotes and things to teach with it so that you all get it. But I'm just saying to you, just like Eric's doing, butt in. Okay, if I'm on a trend of thought, I'll say, hang on, butt in and ask and share and say, Melanie, I don't understand this. What are you talking about this? I'm so happy if you do that. I don't see that as a failure of me. I see it that whatever example I gave, I will give another example, and I will find a way to make you understand, because this year is my year to go back, to actually be fully in touch with the knowing part of me. Nothing else matters. And if the universe gives me circumstances that are busy, then I have to find a way to still have the space for that true nature of mind. Do you all understand? Eric, quick, because we must end. Or can we end and then can I come back to you? Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are late, but I'm staying afterwards. If anyone wants to ask or comment, please do, because this is so important, Mart. This is so important when you emigrate, because this is what you pack in your suitcase, not to worry too much about all the other things. Pack this into your suitcase. Kath, you've been in the hospital again. Pack this into your suitcase, because this is what you need. Nothing else. It makes no difference. If we live, if we die, if we this, if we that, doesn't make any difference. Just another incarnation, just another time. Mol, or you too, whatever difficult circumstance, I'm aware you're going through difficult circumstances. I just pick up here and there and everywhere. But you know what? It's so beautiful to me that you are sitting in on both teachings and really trying to learn to make the most of whatever it is you're going through. Okay, it's really important to me that you're doing that. And I'll do anything to help you. Okay.
Thank you, Mel.
It's very important. All of you are going to have lots of hardships. And John as well. John, you've also got to bring it into the path. But let's dedicate, and then I will stay if anybody wants to say anything. So let's really dedicate to all those in the earthquake, especially in Syria. It's so pitiful. My heart goes out to them. May some of this be learned by all those people. May the bereaved be comforted. May all the people in the wars, in this futile war, be able to come to their right senses and everything. And all the people that are suffering. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings
be liberated from the ocean.
Existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene chegana chi balap tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.